Hello, everybody. I'm Juan Lee, and that's Oliver. We're here with you. We had put out, this is Juan Lee and Oliver. We are the co-hosts for It's Life. And as a result of a conversation that he and I had, Oliver, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm sitting here just sharing this with my audience as well, and so to make sure that we can grab some more folk into
We,
this conversation. But yeah, I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It is first time live for myself. It's going to be something that I'm going to be doing more of. But I
Congratulations, man. We need some applause for that, man. Congratulations. Appreciate that. That's good stuff, man. Good stuff.
There you go. I will be
Welcome
doing
to
more
live
of that.
streaming.
Yeah. But at the same time, it was like we really had this opportunity after recording our last episode. Um, and it was just right because tomorrow is Independence Day, 4th of
Mhm,
July.
mhm.
And I guess it's because of my history, my background, that it really caught me in a way when we had that conversation as it pertains, because what it caused me to do is go out asking other people as it relates to what does patriotism mean to you,
Mhm.
and I was amazing as it relates to some of the responses that I've gotten. And I'll just tell you my background. I guess but just in case those that are watching, my background is that I spent 9 years in the military, as you know, and I have a perspective of what this country means to me because of the experiences that I've had around the world. I mean, I've been to Europe, I've been to Asia, I've been to the Middle East, I've been to Africa, I've been all of these places, and there's no place like home. In spite of you know what's going on in our country, as it being as divided as it is,
Mhm.
um, and it's divided in such a very polarizing way, and it's at the top. This is not a roots. This is not a ground roots thing.
Mhm.
This is at the top where we're divided, and it's just presenting itself all the way down to the roots. And so I thought it would be very interesting in talking with you and said, how do we think about patriotism? And I'm hoping that we get some interest and people will show up and they can share their opinions as it relates to what patriotism means to them. But until we do, let's just kick on. Let's see what we got and how we can what patriotism, what it should mean or what it does mean. And I guess we'll just start with the old question is, now granted, patriotism and patriotic is different, you know.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. I mean, because patriotism
Mhm.
is how you feel towards the country.
Okay. So patriotism is okay.
Patriotic is how you demonstrate it.
Okay. I was kind of thinking the other way around.
Okay,
So
well, you
to
got
so
mine.
so patriotic would be the feeling that you have towards whatever it is, that level of
No, that's
loyalty. What?
patriotism.
Well, I'm just saying. I'm hearing what you're saying, but in coming into it, I was thinking the other way around. I'm thinking that the the ideology pa- to be patriotic is around the ideology. Patriotism is the actionable display of that ideology.
Say that again.
That's kind of where I was thinking. So, to be if I'm patriotic, that means I have a certain feeling towards
No, that's the
this.
other way around.
No,
Patriot.
I hear you. I hear you, but I'm telling you what I was thinking.
Oh, okay,
That's what I
okay,
was thinking. So what I'm
okay.
thinking is patriot, because when I looked up the word patriot, right?
Right.
It says a person who vigorously supports their country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So and so I see what you're saying. Patriotism is the ideology around it. Patriotic is the demonstration. I'm
Yeah.
just saying I was thinking the opposite.
Okay. Okay. Because here's the thing. In a lot of the conversations that I was having with
Hmm.
a lot of different people, it comes to find out that that's exactly what they were thinking also. And I'm just saying, how does everybody get on the same page? Because one doesn't one doesn't dismiss the other one in the sense that one, it's just, do you operate or feel, demonstrate the way that you should feel about it is not what it's not the same as what you should feel about. I mean, what it is, you know.
Okay. I get that. I get that. I think, and it would be great to hear some. So I'd love to hear, like you said, you had some conversations with folks. I'd love to hear what they said because just me looking up the definitions, I think, is what caused me to view it that way. Right. So patriotism, the quality of being patriotic,
Well, see,
which is vague if you're not really sure what it is to be patriotic. Right.
it's,
So
yeah, because it's interesting because, I looked it up and it's just like the love of country. That's
okay,
what patriotism is. It's just the love of
love
country.
of country.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the love of country. You know, that's the simple way of putting it. It's just, it's like I was sharing with you earlier. It's like we, me and you and I to our families. It's like that's our family.
Hmm.
That's, we don't have to like what they do, but you can't dismiss yourself. You can't separate yourself from them in the sense that that's your family. That's what patriotism is to the country. You're gonna identify with the country because it's home. It's who you are. I mean, that's my way of putting it in the sense of how I think about the men and women that served in the military,
Hmm.
especially black men and women
Hmm.
that had to go fight on foreign soil and come back to this country, but yet not be appreciated by the country. But yet, this is still home.
Do you feel like since you used that example,
Hmm.
coming home to a place that doesn't recognize you
Hmm.
holistically as
Hmm.
being a part of this country in the way that some others are a part of the country, can that person truly be patriotic under those circumstances?
That that's a good question in the sense of what we're here trying to identify, because patriotism um, doesn't denote how they're treated. See, I mean, it's like what's your alternative?
Hmm.
What's the alternative? Now, we can say that this is the point I'm saying about this family. You know, you argue with them, you fight with them. Now, to the degree that what we're talking about here is, it's really, really difficult to be able to not even be identified and acknowledged as being a whole person. Now, it's not, it's not an easy thing to have to accept, but it doesn't change the fact that if we're not going to work together to be able to identify the wrongs as much as the rights, okay, then we can't just put our head in the sand and say we don't identify. What's our alternative?
That's a good question in terms of what is the alternative. I'm thinking though, from your family analogy perspective that you gave.
Hmm.
So I'm part of a family. There are some, you know, good folk in that family. There are some folk that are challenging in that family. There are some folk who maybe hate you, who have estranged themselves. You got all different types of folks, right? Patriotism for me, in the vein of family, would denote some level of loyalty to all of those individuals, regardless of how they act, right? And me also being willing to sacrifice in one way or another for those individuals, regardless of how they act. That doesn't always happen. Now,
Well,
that's probably the ideal.
yeah, yeah. And but see, but be careful in this sense, because see, family is the covering of all of the individuals.
Hmm.
Okay, your loyalty is to the family, not necessarily to the individuals. You get
Okay.
what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Because they acting up and under, but they're under the covering. Like I can't change my last name, and irrespective of the fact that what my last name means. It's everybody falls under that.
Hmm.
Okay, so it doesn't mean that I need to have to embrace every one of them and be happy, kumbaya, and all that. But the fact of the matter is, I can't disown them. I
Can
can't.
can you not disown them and still, because there may be some level of disassociation.
You can do that. You can do that.
Is that in, if we're bringing this back now to the country,
Hmm.
can you have that same level of disassociation and be considered patriotic?
Absolutely. When you say, based on what your disassociation is, because disassociation is like they acting a fool.
Hmm.
I don't have to. That's they're acting a fool doesn't change the fact that I'm still a citizen of the United States. This is still my country.
Hmm.
We have to work on how we do that, not that we do that. It's not an option. you know that's the thing that I think we thought, throw the baby out with the bathwater. No, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We got to work to make it a perfect, a perfect union. Okay. And it ain't gonna happen overnight. It's not gonna happen in our generation. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't have some type of unity, trying to search and to seek the same thing, then we're surely never going to get there if we don't have the same identity as relates to what we're trying to accomplish. We say we're in this suit for this more perfect union, but what does this more perfect union look like?
Yeah, I it's interesting because how this even came about for us to even continue this conversation is because I feel like when you and I were having the conversation before,
Mm-hmm.
I I, I may have dropped what I felt like were some bombs around around my thought process, but I think that's just me. So me thinking about it, right? I think that there are, this is my perspective. So for
Mm-hmm.
anybody who might be listening or catching this in the replay, my perspective is that the the terms, the actual terminology around patriotism, patriotic, patriot, I feel like has a different connotation depending on who you talk to. So if you would ask me, just gunshot answer, patriotism, patriot, I'm automatically going to think about something extremish. That's just me. I'm going to automatically think that, right? So now that could be shaped by things that I've seen and experiences that I've had and that kind of thing. But when I think patriotism, although we know that it has something to do with love of country and loyalty to country and your willingness to sacrifice for country, from my vantage point, that's often displayed with some level of extremism. So I think immediately, uh I think to Confederate flag and you know the rah 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 kind of person who's just like, give me my Ford and my gun and my Milwaukee brew and it's nothing but America. I'm thinking that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that's what it is, but I'm just saying I'm saying all that to say I believe that there are many people, maybe that are like me who maybe it's skewed in a sense.
Well, no, here's the thing, and it's very interesting that you bring that up, is because we are in a country that is still fighting a civil war.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of the fact that we've never become unified. They call us the United States of America, but we've never become unified. Because if we had, we would all have what we would know what patriotic means. Because here's the dichotomy of this though, because you had people that were just as patriotic. Now here's the drop the mic here. There were people that was just as patriotic that were carrying the Confederate flag as they were in the Union. They were just as patriotic to their beliefs of country as the Union was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, but they couldn't both weren't going to win. And the fact is that one lost, and we're still trying to put it together. We're still trying to put it together.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we can't we can't think like it never happened. Yes, it happened. And just by not speaking about it doesn't make it go away. It has to be understood that we have to make this an idea that we all have the exact same understanding of what patriotism means, what it stands for. Mm-hmm. Because we can be patriotic, but until we come together and with that same definition, mm-hmm. we're going to be fighting at each other because we both have our own interpretation or understanding of what patriotic means.
That's true. And I think it goes back to that, right? What is that? And just, since we had our conversation, I was like, let me just peruse a little bit, because I'm not going to say I've never thought about it, but I haven't thought about it to the degree where I feel like it would make a difference in my life. And that could be good or bad. But patriotism at its core is essentially good citizenship.
At its core, at its very root core. And I'll give you a prime example of it. We are in a state currently, right now in 2023, mm-hmm. that we are having to revisit things that we would have hoped that we had put behind us, because we as a country we did not come to a point. And I go back to, let's just say it, the 2016 election, mm-hmm. where people chose not to vote. The consequences of that choice is going to be lived out for a long time. And it's very interesting if you're familiar with what just happened in the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. They just turned over in the last year, they've turned over Roe versus Wade. They have turned over what was the thing they just did last week?
Affirmative action.
Mm-hmm. And they also did something about, they ain't gonna go into that other one. But the fact is that they've changed some things that hopefully had been put behind us and stirred it back up because of an election that people felt that was insignificant. And that election has put 3 justices on the court that have overturned what we thought we had put behind us.
Mm-hmm. Meaning that for those who did not participate in that election, if patriotism at its core is good citizenship, and let me add another word to that, good civic citizenship, mm-hmm. that these folk were not displaying patriotism at its finest. They chose to be unpatriotic, if you will.
Well, let's just put it like this. They were not participating in the fullness of what it means to be. Like, for instance, everybody doesn't necessarily have to put on a uniform to show their patriotism. Mm-hmm. But everybody has the ability, has the right. And this really goes to one of the questions that I wanted to bring up. Should it be a requirement or is it just a personal right to be patriotic? Because when you choose not to, you take on that individual right to not do it,
Mhm.
to not to participate, not to be a full agent. Then where is it that that's where you are you have a part to play. And when you choose not to engage it, then the consequences come from not engaging.
So let me ask you this. Let's say, for the sake of argument,
Mm.
that because your question, repeat your question. Should it be?
Should it be patriotism be something that's a personal response, a personal right,
Mhm.
so to speak? And let me just read the it says, should patriotism be a personal choice, or is it something that should be expected or enforced by society or the government?
So let's say, for sake of argument, that the answer is that patriotism should be enforced. How would that even take place?
When you say
Without hold,
enforces,
so let me add a caveat.
mhm.
How would that take place without the individuals responsible for enforcing it being unpatriotic themselves?
Oh well, I'm gonna tell you, enforce is extreme. I'm
Okay.
saying enforce is extreme. I think there's a medium there somewhere that I think we need to understand the value of it, that we can engage collectively together and say, okay, this is a space where we can all reach this place and understand the meaning of it and the purpose of it.
Hmm.
To be enforced by the, yeah, that's extreme. But to say, it's sort of like, it's like the voting issues that we're running into in our society right now, is that they're trying to make it harder for people to vote. Why are they making it harder? It should be easy to vote. I mean, here's the thing: if it took a week to have an election, what difference does it make if everybody got engaged? But instead, we're putting parameters on it behind it. Say, okay, now if you don't have it done by this particular time, it don't count. Come on now. Let's make sure that everybody gets a voice in this thing and begin to speak and begin to play a part in this thing called the United States of America. But you just don't make it harder to vote. But see, it seems like that's what I'm saying. I mean, that's what people are doing. They're trying to make it so that everybody doesn't get to participate, and that's a problem. But if you don't think that it's not important to vote. See, when you got to stand in line 2 and 3 hours to vote, something wrong. But at the same time, if you don't vote, something wrong.
Yeah, that's so it's it's interesting, right? And I feel like patriotism now, granted, and you've said this in the beginning, your perspective, the lens that you look through is going to be different than the average human being because you are in the military.
Not the
That's a
human
completely
being, not the human being, not a different human being.
the
No,
the
no,
average human being.
no. I'm saying we all are human beings. But my point here is that I think I was able to see a perspective that the average person in the United States haven't had a chance to be exposed to.
Yeah, and I agree with that. But here's my argument, right? I feel like the individuals on your side of the lens,
Uh huh.
I think some of them skew patriotism to their advantage, which then leaves other folk the only choice that they feel like they have is to go against civic citizenship because they don't feel like it's going to benefit them anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and that's unfortunate, and that's the problem that our society has allowed, um, has the challenge to go through. That's the problem that we have. Is that's the challenge.
And here's what's interesting. As I was saying that, I just saw Williams comment. He
Mm-hmm.
literally pretty much said the same thing I just said.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost democratic. It's almost like democratic governments are unconsciously or maybe intentionally making the people less patriotic. That's exactly what I was just saying. The man, that's perfect timing, man. That he would say that at the same time.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
and so with us trying to determine like what is patriotism, it feels like it's going to be skewed because it must be skewed for certain individuals so that it benefits them.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That see, and that goes back to the fact that we've still not became union. We've not become a unit, a united yet.
Hmm.
Because now we're using this division to be able to manipulate, to be able to see what's in it for me, and still understand that we don't understand the value of the unity,
Hmm.
and instead we're using it to divide us, and that's unfortunate, but that's where we are. That's where we are. And so, in spite of it,
Hmm.
we've got to know that even though there are going to be those that are working against us, we've got to engage. We've got to engage. We can't allow um, those that are trying to force their own private agendas
Hmm.
against us, if only we know that we're fighting that agenda with that which brings forth unity.
What does that look like? Because obviously we can talk about voting and we can talk about more importantly voting the how essential it is to vote on the local level
Mhm.
and the state level. We can talk about those kinds of things, but let's peel back the layers even further on grassroots. What does that look like? Because here's the next thing: many of us feel like, and I'm gonna say us because I'll admit that I sometimes fall into this
Mhm.
category, that even with intentionality placed around getting involved locally and making sure that you are funneling the right people through the voting process into the state, which funnels because it trickles, right?
Mhm.
If you
Mhm.
can get your local folk and your state folk and you can kind of make some inroads, there are people who believe that even with that, that the agenda, and I'm using that in air quotes, I'm just saying that for shock value, if you will, on the front end with higher level leadership and the higher you get up the hierarchy
Mhm.
is already fixed so that it doesn't really matter what we do. So what is it, let's say we lay that all aside in terms of patriotism at its core being good civic citizenship. What does that
Mhm.
look like, boots on the ground?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. It's the fact that we are still on an uphill battle.
Hmm.
Okay, we're there's no reason to think that the ground is level, and to even think that it is, it's a misconception. Okay, so we've got to understand that what we're trying to attain, we haven't gotten there yet. We haven't gotten there yet, and I'm talking about as a people, as a nation, as a we are not there because of this very topic,
Hmm.
because we just had last couple weeks ago Juneteenth.
Hmm.
Juneteenth has become a national holiday. That means everybody celebrates Juneteenth because it's a national holiday. That's an acknowledgement of something that this country has not acknowledged in the past as it being something that is worth celebrating or acknowledging.
Hmm.
And it needs to be acknowledged holistically as a country. It's not just something for people that were freed, but it was for the nation because it addresses a state or a position of our country that came to a realization that they needed change. And by acknowledging that, there's an opening that everybody has to get and say, okay, this is who we are. This is worth acknowledging
Hmm.
as something holistically as this country is that this is who we are. And from that point, we understand, okay, now, as everybody realize that, let's start working to make sure that that's a part of our past and not a part of our future. That has to be the emphasis in the ground roots at the ground level. And I understand even those though even that there are those that are above us that are working counteracting that decision, or those that act of being that that thing that we have called Juneteenth, that thing that is known for everybody. We have everybody to celebrate that. It's something to be celebrated on all sides.
Mhm.
Everybody has to celebrate that. Not just the people that look like you and I, but everybody needs to celebrate the value of what that represented, in spite of um, the trauma that it caused.
Mhm. Is the institution of that national holiday, is that patriotism on the power on the part of those that sit high in the hierarchy, or is that are we getting thrown a bone?
And that now
Did I just derail it?
no. To be honest with you, that's that's both in the same. That's both and.
Okay.
That's both and. There ain't no there's no joke in that, because you know that's both and.
So in light of that, right? How do we, knowing that, how do we now align ourselves with the connotation of patriotism? Because here's the thing. I believe that there are folk who are at the core are good civic citizens, but don't align themselves with what patriotism means in terms of the connotation that some of us have because of things like that. And
Yeah,
I see Valencia's question.
yeah, hmm yeah.
And
It,
that's and I think that's the tough part. So getting everybody to rally around a specific definition of patriotism is tough because of things
it,
like that.
yeah, everybody got their own perspective. I get it, but
Mhm.
the root of what it states, though, is that regardless is the fact that we're this melting pot. If we don't decide to come into some type of commonality, what is this melting pot headed? Where's this melting pot headed?
I agree. And let me not dismiss Valencia's question. I'm gonna give you my answer. My
Mm-hmm.
answer, and one, you can tackle this. My
Mm-hmm.
answer is you can't make anybody do anything, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
in a perfect world, you would think that if something is stood up as a national holiday, that everyone would recognize it, but it's not. I mean, and that goes for everything, right? Everybody doesn't celebrate Christmas, everybody doesn't celebrate Easter, everybody you name the list goes on and on. There, people for whatever reason don't choose to celebrate that. So you can't make everybody do something, right? So you can't make somebody celebrate Juneteenth. I think for me though, the Juneteenth conversation is relative in the sense that if we are standing something up that is now representative of a piece of history that should be acknowledged, and we have individuals who already have a skewed view of patriotism, who feel like, hey, this is both and, like we're getting thrown a bone here, which is kind of disrespectful if we really wanted to, if we really want to go there, right? But is inclusive in the sense that, man, finally we at least get to talk about it. I think that the here's what I'm trying to say. The consistent bouncing between, you know, these ideologies that help us create some level of balance is always going to have us in a place where our ideology around patriotism is going to be skewed. I see you, Neil.
Yeah.
Feeling versus demonstration. Neil said, "Thank you for your service."
Yeah.
That's for my good friend Juan there.
Yeah. Hey, but here's the thing. We're not gonna if we gotta force somebody to be patriotic, they're
Hmm.
not patriotic.
Yeah, but here's the thing: and it goes back to I think where we started in the beginning of this conversation. We got to define, or not define. I think we have to redefine what patriotism has meant for a lot of folks. Because I was honest in the beginning. Those who
Mhm.
weren't here in the beginning, I was honest in the beginning. When I hear the word patriotic, I don't automatically think being a good civic citizen, which is what patriotism is at the core. I'm thinking something way extreme. I'm thinking, here's what I'm thinking. Can we go there? Here's what I'm thinking. I guarantee you that all those folk who rushed the Capitol thought they were being patriotic. And there are many people who, when they hear the word patriotism, think that. And they're
And
like, nah, I'm good. I don't
and
I don't need to do that.
and that's the challenge that we have right now because what they were doing has to do with their mind, has to do with the fact that what they were doing, it demonstrated, they were demonstrating patriotism.
Patriotism.
Okay, and the point I'm saying, because they felt a love for their country. There was no difference in the Civil War, is what I'm saying. That was the same thing.
So patriotism, there is a right patriotism and there is a wrong patriotism. I'm asking. I'm not suggesting that. I'm asking.
Um, no, there isn't. This is the whole point. This is the whole point. It's how you feel about the country that you live in. Now, what makes up that feeling has to do with your own personal experiences. Now, when we allow those experiences to end or to impact our patriotism, that's where the problem becomes. Because I'm thinking that the way I view it or the things that I see, the way I see it is better than the way you see it. And that's the problem. It's not that we have a different definition of patriotism. It's just what of our experiences has caused us to view it from my perspective, a word that you and I know pretty well.
So and I think this will speak to Neil's question. This is a good segue into Neil's question. So if there isn't a right or wrong, then what is the display of that ideology called? Because that can be right or wrong.
That's very interesting.
Which segues into that question. How do you get people that have patriotism to be patriotic? That means that
Well,
now the
see,
question I would ask Neil is what is his version of patriotism, and is being patriotic the is is being patriotic the public display of that?
that's all it is. But see, that's what I'm saying. That's the demonstration. The patriotism is the patriotic is the demonstration of patriotism.
So the demonstration can be right or wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So dig into Valencia. Throw Valencia's uh comment and question up on the screen. I'm gonna let you tackle that since you were talking about voting. In some countries, there's compulsory voting, where voting
Yeah.
is mandatory. So you talked
Yeah.
about
That's exactly kinds of things that we I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
yeah, but here's the question though, right? Because you talked about your question. You talked about should it be a choice? Should it be a right? Should it
Hmm.
be we used enforced, which is the extreme, right? So here's part of that extreme. It's compulsory in Australia, but here's the kicker question: does that mean that Australians are more patriotic because they're following the law? That's a fantastic question.
Well, here's the breakdown to that. The whole idea is that the country stay unified. Okay, it's about staying unified. If it means that people, because here's the point, we're in our country, in this country, we just talk about the United States. After 9/11, we got rights taken from us that we had, and we began to operate differently because of a threat that we felt that we were under because of 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And so things changed for the sake of the whole. For the sake of the whole. And so in many cases, maybe the challenge is going extreme, but the extreme is for the whole. It's for the betterment of the whole. So I'm not saying that they're better than we are, we're worse, or we're better than they are. But when you get those people in those high authorities or the high offices, why are we doing what we're doing? Are we doing this stuff for our own private agenda, our own personal agenda? Or are we doing it for the betterment of the whole? And if it can be understood that what we're doing, everybody ain't gonna feel good. Everybody ain't gonna get their way. But is it for the betterment of the whole?
Now here's the thing. Some can argue that it wasn't for the betterment of the whole, that there were private and very ulterior agendas.
And that you're always going to be able to have to battle. Because and that's how you can really can't begin to understand. When people tell you who they are, listen to them. Listen to them. That's where when we get to people wanting to be connected to something and not listening to what they are saying, they will tell you who they are if you listen to them. But when you want to be connected to somebody just because, then you end up falling prey to them taking you somewhere because you didn't listen to what they were saying. You were just following them because they fit something that you admire or something that you want to admire. But listen to them. They will tell you what they think and how they think. And
I agree with that. I agree
and
with
and,
that. I
and,
think
and
that makes it tough, though.
but again, it goes into the part where you have to know yourself and understand how you connect to other people, how people around you are going to be influenced by you, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so it's important. Neil
Neil,
said,
I see your question, Neil. I got a question for you as well, Neil. To go back to your previous question, where it said, "How do you get people that have patriotism to be patriotic?" Neil, if you're still watching, I would be curious to hear what your definition of patriotic is. Like, what does patriotic look like to you? But this question said, what happens when your government doesn't represent what you believe is patriotism? And we kind of touched on that because I feel like the whole reason why it's skewed for many of us, this whole idea around patriotism, is because what stood up as patriotism, or what is stood up as process and procedure, we can clearly see there's an ulterior motive, but that is stood up as patriotism. So now we're like, man, if that's what that is, I don't want to have nothing to do with that.
well,
Right.
see, that's why
But
it's
I feel
important.
like I could still be a good civic citizen outside of subscribing to that.
Well, but that's why it's important to know it for yourself, and don't let anybody else take you down a road that will lead you to place that is inconsistent with the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
See, how when everything that was done on January the 6th, January, was it
Mm-hmm.
January 6th?
Mm-hmm.
Went through the system of the process of democracy. and yet they still were fighting against it. That was the sign. People are not. You allow people to take you down a road that's contrary to everything that they stood for, everything that had lived up to that day. And they were saying, because the person that I wanted to win didn't win, I'm gonna run the Capitol. That's not how it works. And so if it's a democracy, then let it play itself out. And it went through the processes. But how people have come to the point where they're saying it was rigged, and they're still saying it today, they're following a person and not the system.
Mm.
And
Here's a question.
so, huh?
Here's a question I have for you, and I'm not being a pessimist. It's going to sound like I am when I say this. I'm not being a pessimist, but here I it's tough for me to believe that as a country we will rally around a uh that we will rally around one definition. And the only reason I'm saying that that's tough for me to grasp that that would be the case is based on the fact that one, we are and have consistently been divided in many different ways. Two, the powers that be, if you will, create the environment for us to be consistently divided.
Mm-hmm.
So, in order to survive that environment,
Mm-hmm.
individuals are going to subscribe, whether positive or negative, to their own respective ideologies around patriotism to protect their own interests
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or the little bit of interest that they may have.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be from a familial level on one end of the spectrum all the way to Fortune 100 on the other end of the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever
Mm-hmm.
those interests are that I'm trying to protect. The question I have after saying all of that is how do how do is there a line that all of those people can walk as it relates to patriotism that would allow for the level of division that is consistent in our lives, but still allow for some level of patriotism from the lens that you look at it through to be walked through effectively? Is that even possible?
Well, the first thing is engagement. Let's just keep it real. You've got to be engaged.
Mm-hmm.
If see, the outcome has nothing to do with engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whether or not you get things done and it happens your way or not doesn't mean that you don't engage. Engagement is the only way that we're going to be able to right the ship. You can't stand back and say, okay, I'm gonna put your hands up, it ain't gonna ever be right, it ain't going right. No, that you've got to engage, and you've got to stay engaged. It's not like you get the opportunity to wake up one morning and say, I don't feel like living today, and I'm just not going to engage. No, no. You want breath, the air comes into your body, you've got to engage. And that's what it takes for it to just, that's the fundamental part.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want me to talk who I really am, if we understand that love is the answer for everything. See, the outcome has nothing to do with the resolve to get engaged. And if we're engaged and understand that what we have in common is more, it's more important than what I'm going to get from this thing. Because remember, this experience is only temporary.
Hold that thought for a second, because you're putting a nice bow on this, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. Let me let me get let me get Valencia's comment though, because I agree with this. She said we only rally around one definition of patriotism when it is us against everybody else. I agree with that.
Unfortunately, boy, this is a conversation that's pretty big. And the reason that I say it's pretty big is because even that rally is is it's provoked.
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt. I agree 100%. It
and
is.
and and it's what you don't know that causes you to rally, not what you do know.
That's interesting.
It's what you don't know what causes you to rally versus what you do know,
But
and
that
that's intentional.
and that's intentional. I agree with that. And all of that is what helps support my reasoning around the fact that I don't think we can walk away with. Now you started to give the answer, and I'm saying this facetiously, the perfect world answer.
Well, no, but the
I'm being
perfect world.
facetious, because I
Well,
agree with
no,
you. I,
well,
I
no,
agree
I,
with you.
I get you, but the thing about it is that when we make it practical, and the practicality is each and every one of us has to demonstrate it, and understanding that it's not all about us. It's not all about us. This is the only way this thing is going to survive, is that we realize that it's bigger than just one of us.
Hmm.
It's bigger than one of us. In spite of all of the things that will hinder that process or hinder us from being able to reach our best. But here's the point. Collectively, if you're engaged, if you and I engage,
Hmm.
we're stronger than we are individually. And when we collectively come together, when you meet with me and I meet with you, and we meet with others with the same ideology of understanding that we're here temporarily to invest into something that's going to be here after we're gone, that's the mindset. That's the mindset. But if we're all here trying to think that we're going to get it while we're going to fix this thing today, it ain't going to happen. But it's only what you invest in today will determine whether or not the tree grows something next year. What the fruit's going to be on the tree next year is going to be based on what you sow this year. And we've got to look at what we want to grow versus what we have here on the ground.
Yeah. Listen, I'm with you. I'm with you. But if I'm being honest,
And I want you to be.
if I'm being honest, it's tough to see that. It's tough to envision a world where that will actually materialize. I think that to certain degree that will happen, right? I have the opportunity, dare I say, the obligation and responsibility to do that for the people that are in my immediate line, right? So that's what we hope, is that everybody takes on that level of responsibility, and that each one reach one kind of scenario will take place, which will give us holistically what you're talking about, the ideology around patriotism that allows us to engage in a way that is that shows that we're thinking beyond ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
Full transparency, not being a pessimist, although it's going to sound that way. Full transparency, I'm not sure we get there because we're not, because what's being the maze, if you will, that's being said. I'm not being a conspiracy theorist when I say the word maze, but the maze, for lack of a better word, that's being set up for
Mm-hmm.
us to navigate through, is set up in a way to keep us in spaces where we will think differently.
Oh, and I know that this is not easy. Okay, I
Right.
know this is not easy. But the point I'm saying is that all it takes is one plus one,
Yeah, I agree.
one plus one.
So for those of you who are listening, we actually agree. So let's be clear. We Juan and I agree. I typically am the play devil's advocate, but a lot of that comes out of my experience, and I don't want to ignore some of the comments. Carlita says thought provoking. Thank you. It is thought provoking. That's his whole thing is thought provoking. Neil said required to vote. We are that country. Where are you, Neil? You in Canada? I think if I'm not mistaken, Neil, I think Neil's in Canada. Um, Good guy, Neil. Matter of fact, Juan, you and Neil need to have a conversation. Neil, reach out to Juan. You guys need to
We're,
connect.
we're going to give them all our information
Yeah, you need
when
to
we
connect,
leave.
Juan. Carlita said, collective work and responsibility. Neil said
Beyond
something's
individuality.
wrong for sure. And Carlita said we don't think beyond our individuality. That's true. We don't. And sometimes, Carlita, it's not even that. It's not even for some of us. It is that we are selfish. Let's be clear. For some of us, it is that it is all about us. I need to get mine. You get yours. I don't really care how you do it. I'm gonna worry about me. But for some of us, the system, and I hate using that word because when you hear that, when people say that word, like, oh, here we go again. But let's be clear, is partly designed to keep certain individuals thinking a certain way. And then, unfortunately, we do not do what you just said. We do not take on the responsibility of changing the narrative for those who are around us and the folk that come after us. And so we pass that down.
And that's how this continues.
Right.
That's how this continues. And so to make a change, we've got to make a change.
Right.
And that's the thing that we have to acknowledge is that each and every one of us has to make that decision for ourselves and not allow the system that you're talking about. And I'll be honest with you, we are going to have to climb uphill because our society is structured to divide us.
Yeah, that's what Carlita said. Labels and expectations is what keeps us divided.
It's but that's a choice. Even though it's presented to us in that fashion, doesn't mean that we have to respond to it in that fashion.
You sounded like Kanye for a second when you said that.
What's that? You ain't had to go there.
No, I'm sorry, man.
You ain't had to go there.
Don't crucify my buddy Juan.
You ain't had to go there. You ain't had to go there.
I'm making jokes. But yeah, you're right. You're right. So here's the thing. So talk to this though. Since you said that, let's keep it all the way real. There are some individuals who don't feel like it's a choice.
What do you
say to those folk?
We all have a choice. What we don't want is the consequences of our choices. We don't want to be held accountable for our choices. And that leads to how we prepared for our choices. We all have a choice. Now, whether or not we feel comfortable and confident in that choice and being willing to stand up to whatever the outcome of that choice is, now that's where things get a little dicey. But every one of us have the choice to say, I'm not going to fall prey to that division and be willing to sacrifice whatever that means for the sake of the bigger whole. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, you're talking about a holistic change in mindset, which I'm with that. Shout out to Carlita. I think I see in the comments, served 22 years.
What branch, Carlita? What branch? What branch?
You and Juan have something in common.
Not them many years. Not them many years. But I can appreciate it because that's a holistic approach. I mean, that's something that you can't serve 22 years and not understand that the picture is bigger than you are.
Yeah, good point.
You can't do it.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
And see, that's the part that what I'm trying to impart or to share is that we all are in this thing that's bigger than just one of us.
Yeah.
It's all of us.
Good point, Carlita. And we talk about this on the podcast. Carlita says some people sincerely don't know they have choices. And that's something we've talked about on a podcast episode that, this, yeah.
They got to own it, though. I mean, they got to want to be able to stand up and say, okay, yeah, this is mine. I'm willing to own it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's easier to follow the lead when you don't have to, when you don't have to worry about. What's she saying?
She said, personally,
Oh, she said prison.
I thought you meant the military. Okay. Oh,
Hey, hey,
hey, well,
I can relate. I can
that's a
relate
good
to that
perspective.
too.
I'm about to say that's a good
I
perspective, though.
I can relate to that too. I
Yep,
spent.
that's a great perspective because yeah, that's a I dare say even a greater perspective because
Hey,
that's the other end of the spectrum,
hey, you're
right?
absolutely right. And the
And
thing
and
about it is,
and you're going to see within that system where there are very specific things designed to skew all kinds of ideologies, right? So that's even a that's even a different perspective. And so I get that where you say the labels and expectations, hear the word severe and associate that with I get that. And so here's the thing, right? There's a lot of work that has to be done. And I'm saying that for myself because you those who are just joining or joined later, I told you what my when I hear the word patriotism, and this is what kind of sparked this conversation with between me and Juan to begin with, is that I have a very different view of that, which this conversation is helpful because I'm I'm it helps me recognize I'm already doing what I should be doing. I just never filed it under the umbrella of patriotism. So at its core, patriotism is good civic citizenship, which I'm striving to do, right? So I'm striving to be what I should be for my family. I'm striving to uphold the things that I believe are true and good in my community and attempting to be law abiding at to the best of my ability. All of those things, right? They all fall under the umbrella of patriotism, but I never looked at it that way because when I hear the word patriotism, I'm thinking, dude who, got to pick up the Ford F-350 with the flag flying
with the
and
rack on the back of the
right,
window.
yeah, right.
Hmm.
That's literally what I'm thinking,
And
so
and the thing about it is that they both are right. Unfortunately, both of them are right.
and
Un-
that's a tough pill to swallow.
and it's because of the demonstration of it. What is see the flag and the guns on the rack? That's not what it is. But when you assault others for that ideology, for see that's where the one question that I didn't talk about. When does patriotism run into nationalism?
Oh wow. You about to
See,
keep us on for another hour.
that's when it gets to the extremity. It
Mhm.
gets to the extreme when you begin to talk about what are you willing, you're willing to harm others for your benefit of what your ideology is, of what this nation should be versus, and that's why I'm saying it could be right, but until we come to the point where we say, as a United States of America, this is what we stand for, and anything else is outside of patriotism.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Because see, it's not okay for me to try to challenge you because this all our land.
We got to get some other folk to
Well,
we got to get some other folk to deal with that too. Carlita asked a great question. Does it have to be labeled to be true for you? That's a great question.
what does what need to be labeled?
Maybe
Does
not. I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carlita. I'm assuming you meant does my view of patriotism have to be labeled for it to be true to me? If that's what you meant, um, that's a good question. Maybe not because based on the conversation that Juan and I had off camera, which is what led to this conversation, just made me think, hey, I am, I'm being patriotic in my, in the lane that I'm walking in, and I guess we all got to do the same.
it's just are do you love what it is that you stand for? That's the thing. Do you love what it is you stand for? See, that's again, it's different. Your actions and your motivation are different, and that's the challenge here. Um, and if you don't have the right motivation, you're going to probably have some bad actions.
Yeah, we might have to have a follow up discussion based on just the very sentence you just said. Do you love what you stand for? Because I'm playing devil's advocate now. You could love what you stand for. I'm pretty sure the KKK loved what they stood for. And hence why my definition of patriotism is skewed. Because if that's being patriotic and I love what I stand for and it doesn't look like that, who's right?
The word patriotism has to look to what's the benefit of the nation, the whole.
Got you.
Okay. If what he's saying divides us, that's a problem with his patriotism. Him being patriotic is not consistent with patriotism of what it stands for. And that's the problem here, is because we've not came out and said this is see, to
That's a
be
good
able to
definition.
be racist in this country
Mm-hmm.
is the reason why we can't be united.
That's a good cap. What you just said. That's a good, not cap as in lie, but that's a good overall
Mm-hmm. That's
point.
that's why we can't be united, because it's okay to be racist. You have the right to be racist. That's your right to be racist. But the fact of the matter is that conducive to being united?
And if it's not, that's not true patriotism.
Think about it. But that's what we say in our country. That's why I'm saying it's run in a way where if we can be ambivalent, then we keep on being ambivalent as it relates to what we're expecting or what we should be expecting.
Yeah. Listen, this is a great conversation because I'm gonna tell you right now, many folk, and I'm not gonna throw anybody else under the bus. I'll throw myself under the bus with this one. And before I do that, Neil said we need some level of accountability. I agree with that. And Carlita said truth is neither right nor wrong. Truth is truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
good too. Listen,
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a great conversation. I'm gonna tell you why I think it's a great conversation for me in particular, because I'll throw myself under the bus. Typically, when 4th of July comes around, which is kind of the backdrop, obviously, for this conversation, being the 4th tomorrow, is that I'm not usually thinking about none of that. I'll be honest. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
thinking about any of that. I'm thinking about, my biggest challenge is, did they buy up all the meat in Giant?
Yep. Yep.
I'm gonna keep it a buck. Let's just
Yep.
keep it real. I'm
Yep.
not usually thinking that, and so I think the conversation we had off camera was really a nice jolt for me to be like, okay, where do I stand? Where do I stand in all of this? Um, the things that I've been doing, you know, do I need to make adjustments, or should I continue? It's a great opportunity to evaluate what your ideology is around this word called patriotism. What does it mean? Um, yeah, I think it's good, man. I appreciate the fact that we had it
Yeah.
and continued to have it today, and may have to continue to have it again.
I think it's in the ability of our podcast. It's life.
Yep.
These are the challenges that we are confronted with here in the United States, and if not all around the world. It's the fact of where do we hold our allegiance to? Because me and my bigger picture as it relates to humanity,
Hmm.
that's what we are here to protect and preserve, humanity. And at our level, right here in the United States, it's bigger than just one of us, and each and every one of us has that ability to choose to be supportive of the bigger picture,
Yeah.
knowing that we are just passing through this experience called life. And so there's a lot to it. And I think if you join us on It's Life, every other Friday, you can pick up a little bit of this tone in what we do and talking about, the journey that is Clear Journey, where we basically help people navigate through life. Um, people who are looking to be able to see things a little bit clearer, see things from a different perspective, and be able to navigate life a little bit better. Hey, Oliver, let people know where they can find you.
Listen, you can find me everywhere on social media. You see it on the screen there. It's the handle is at Denali LLC, Denoli LLC, or look up my name, Oliver Marcel. If you're on LinkedIn right now, you can connect with me right there by clicking on my name. If you're on Facebook, you can search for me as well. You can email me. It's my first name, Oliver, OLIVER, at denali.org. Would love to have some level of connection with you in conversation. This is what I love to do, converse, helping individuals build relationships, both professionally and personally, build the relationship of their dreams, and living in the men's empowerment space. And the goal, shout out my T-shirt, 2020 before hindsight. That is the goal. I've learned a lot of things in hindsight, and if I can help at least one person to gain some level of clarity on the front end, I'm a happy camper. So that's me. Connect with me.
Yeah, and for me, you can reach me at info@clearjourney.org, or you can go to the website clearjourney.org. And you can also reach out to me at my website, wanleytheauthor.com, where I'm the author of Love Made Simple, the guide to inner peace, contentment, and success, where I really share with you about this new concept, reimagining love, so to speak, because it's really the answer to everything. But hey, I appreciate you guys for coming. We have a real, do you see this, Oliver?
Oh yeah, we got a serious comment came in near the end, huh? I saw Neil's comment. Said for me, it's participation in Republic, Union, and Country, and that's true. In our podcast, we talk about being a participant as it relates to life. Man, we talk about being a participant. Let's see. What do we just get? This is a long one.
Yeah,
Nowadays, I don't see any true patriotism, which for me is first of the integrity with absolute devotion to country and people across color lines. Patriotism has turned into what a group, an umbrella organization impose on us to blindly follow. I don't believe nationalism being patriotism. Yep, we were talking about that. So yeah,
yeah.
you we're with you on that. We're with you on that. Check the replay because we definitely go through some of that. Carrying a gun on behalf of a group who's pretended to love Americans more than me is for me pretentious. Yep. Yeah.
The conversation that this provokes is what it is about. It's just continuing to understand why we do what we do, and understand that we're all in this thing together.
Yeah.
We're all in this thing together. And for us to be in it together, we got to have something that we can connect to put us, to cause us to be able to say, okay, I got your back, you got my back, and we're all in this thing together.
Yeah, we are. And Z, go back and check it out. I hope I said that right. Forgive me if I didn't. Because yeah, I brought up some of those same some of those same points that you had in your comment, man. Definitely brought out some of those same points. Neil said it's about what we are creating in consensus, knowing that we are building towards something. Yeah, and that's what Juan's talked about. It's bigger than us. And thank you, Carlita. Carlita said respects what we do. Thank you uh, for that. And thank you all for being a part of this conversation. Everybody who was in the
Absolutely.
comments, thank you for being a part of this conversation, for lending your thoughts and opinions via comments. We appreciate you for doing that as well.
Stay in touch. You can find us, and we want to stay in touch with you guys. So until next time, I appreciate you all for being here. All
All right.
righty.
Take care. Happy 4th, those of you who celebrate.
See you later.